more education, are getting education in the English language than in the French language. Sorry, than in the Dutch language. But I can't talk about French yet. When Minister of Education, former Minister of Education, Martha Dijkhoff, and I was then her advisor. You know, we keep dancing on each other. When I was minister, she was my advisor, one of my advisors. And when she became minister, I became one of her advisors on foundation-based education. And she stated that the public schools should have education in English. And then the war broke out in St. Martin. Because now the union that has been very quiet suddenly said, we are not giving the children of St. Martin a fair chance. They should be educated in Dutch. It was the union, and to my shocking surprise, the political party, National Alliance, which I'm so happy they didn't win the last election, but which was advocating abolishing foundation-based education and reintroducing Dutch as language of instruction. As far as secondary school is concerned, the kids from the Max who go into the St. Martin Academy, which follows the CXC curriculum. The school from the Catholic School Board decided also a secondary school, also following CXC curriculum, and that school, the St. Dominic High School, got permission from the government last year to establish the International Baccalaureate in English, and instead of taking the CXC Cape curriculum. There is a school on the island, the MPC, Milton Peters College, which has Dutch as language of instruction, but most of the classes are still given in English, because often the kids do not understand what the teachers are saying. In tertiary educations, there are several options for students who want to pursue their tertiary education, and government gives a lot of study financing and scholarships. We have established a University of St. Martin, which is more a college, not yet a full-fledged developed institution, and which has a number of partnership agreements with universities in the United States of America, and also it used to have with the United States Virgin Islands University. So there the students are getting English as language of instruction. Most St. Martin students pursuing tertiary education go to the Netherlands, especially those who have attended secondary schools in Dutch. However, the Netherlands too is globalizing, and guess what? A lot of their studies are in English. So the children who have even gone to school in English in St. Martin go to Holland and also study certain studies, not law, for example, or communications, but business and other studies. They also, communications is also in English, by the way, because my daughter is doing communications in Holland in English. So many of our students go to Holland and follow those international streams, as they call them, because they are open. The Dutch is trying to recruit and have international students from all over the world. And the good thing about that is also because once you study in Holland, you get full study financing from the Dutch government. The Dutch government who believes that every child should be educated and make all possibilities open for every child to get education. And our children carrying a Dutch passport, they're considered Dutch children, so they go and they decide to go to the English stream. Then we have a number of students studying in the United States and Canada. And regrettably, not enough in the Caribbean, in my opinion. So what I'm saying is that our kids are getting more educated in the English language and in the Dutch language. Now let us say have a very, it doesn't have to be long on the French side, not a thing of the sort. It remains in French. So there are several kids students from the French side who come to the Dutch side and go to school in the English schools that are on the Dutch side, but not on the French side. Both sides of the islands have undergone serious constitutional changes. In the French part of the island, there was objections of being under the rule of Guadeloupe, and they want to have direct ties with the so-called mother country, France. So from a commune, they have now gone to a collectivité. And just recently, on October 2010, but the famous 10-10-10, the Netherlands Antilles broke up, and St. Martin, too, who no longer wants to be under Curaçao, is now a separate country within the Dutch kingdom, and thereby eliminating the layer of the Netherlands Antilles. We remain friends. And we still have families and so forth and so on. It's a terrible thing what the politician did, but okay. So in any case, while on the Dutch side, the change in the constitutional status have strengthened the position of the English language, on the French side, that is far from true. On the Dutch side, immediately the government ensured that the constitution, the new constitution of the country St. Martin, is translated in English and put on the website of the government. On the French side, that is unheard of. So why do we need Dutch? And where is Dutch required? Dutch is required in the administration and the justice system. But our officials, our ministers, and our members of parliament, they use English in their debate and in their discussion, while the documents that they are discussing are in Dutch. It is even interesting to see sometimes the agenda. You would have an agenda, let us say, the fixing of the road, agenda point 1, or welcome, agenda point 1. Fixing of the road, agenda point 2. Agenda point 3, the vet of the toegang of whatever, because they did not think fast enough to translate it. So you have a bilingual agenda. And at court proceedings, there's always an interpreter on the Dutch side, although many times the Dutch judges and prosecutors and lawyers are comfortably in English, but interpretation in Spanish, French Creole, Haitian Creole, and also on all of those other languages, there's always an interpreter on the Dutch side, because the Dutch always hail themselves as great human rights defenders. Okay? I used to be a court interpreter for a long time, but just recently I got a traffic fine, which was interesting because I was talking on the phone, on the cellular, and I saw the policeman, I just greeted him, I forgot. I see them talking on the phone, you know, I'm just back from Holland about a year ago, and so I'm like greeting him, and he stopped me and said, I'm getting a ticket for chatting on the phone. And I smiled because when I look at the fine, the form, it was in English. This is what I had battled for. These forms used to be in Dutch. And then, but I still want to make a point, so I could have paid, but I said, I'm going to court. So I'm going into court not now as the interpreter of the courthouse, but as a defendant. And the Dutch asked me very carefully in Dutch, kunt u Nederlands spreken? Mind you, I used to be the court interpreter myself. So I said, I will try. So the interpreter, who I trained, who's there now, stood up to be next to me, and they just kept shaking their heads. I said, I'm in court. Let me be honest. Let me show them my Dutch, right? So anyway, I still have to pay the fine, but they gave me a chance of paying it too, because they said it was not an emergency that I had to be on the phone. Basically, what I'm saying is, the form is now in English. Those forms, the fines and so forth, are now in English, which was formerly impossible. And I had an interpreter if I needed one. I just want to have that kind of experience, how that feels to be a defendant. But you know, that is totally unthinkable on the French side. As a matter of fact, the interpreters on the French side are no longer appearing in court because they're not being paid. So the defendants do not have no interpreter, they do not know what's going on, and I think that's a serious violation of their constitutional rights. Do we need English for the business community? No. On the Dutch side, the business people, the Chamber of Commerce, to conduct business in English. And I told them the other day that I see some forms of theirs still on the website in Dutch. And so, as a young entrepreneur now, because I mean, in linguistics you don't get no money. So now as a young entrepreneur, I have the opportunity to translate 16 forms in English for the Chamber of Commerce. This is totally unheard of the Chamber of Commerce on the French side, where business is conducted in French. The Prime Minister also asked me to establish a committee to translate all the new organic laws, a lot of them, and so they want them translated into English. And we will be working on that. And just recently also, the government of St. Martin awarded my agency a project to submit a language policy in education to government. This project will be embarked upon within short. Interestingly, the assignment of the project corresponds to several aspects of the charter to be signed at this conference. I should skip. I see him telling me to shut up, right? The acceptance of the charter by the government of St. Martin and the new Minister of Education, who, by the way, herself is a linguist. I don't know what is this with the communication people and linguists. We are certain that because of this charter, we have to do more in-depth research on the equalized versions of English spoken on the Dutch and the French side. And we will have to look more now into why and how do we teach Dutch for those areas, let us say the lawyers and maybe the police department, even though they are now also going into writing up their findings in English. How do we handle the Dutch language? As I said once before, 20-something years ago, I am not waging war against Dutch. I'm not waging war against the language of those who colonized us. But it is only right that my people shall not be gagged. My people shall have the possibility to express themselves in every possible way. My friend, colleague, and cousin, Daniela Jeffrey, a historian and translator on the French side, was very somber when I called her and told her of this conference. She said, Linda, we are being recolonized within the new system. We are being gagged and we have no voice. That's why this conference is important. When I go back, I have work to do. I had taken off my shoes and said, that's enough. But I have to put them back on and start to march again. Thank you.